This is where we will show you how React offers a new approach that streamlines front-end development. This is because it's a powerful UI library that many big firms such as Facebook, Netflix, and Airbnb have all adopted. It is the way forward. React allows us to create reusable UI components in JavaScript that we can use again and again in our sites. All that being said, welcome to the first lesson of Module 2. We'll look at the pros and the cons using React in our applications, and how we might fit it into our existing web development stack. Lesson 1, Introducing React. And the objectives for today's lesson will be to examine the fundamentals of React, and then show you how to solve problems using React, and then finally fit React into web applications. Understanding React. You already know that React is a great library for UIs. That's why you're doing this course, and you appreciate that it should most definitely be a part of any front-end web toolkit. But it isn't a complete solution for all front-end web development. Let's start off by defining the primary concepts and features of React. So what is React? To introduce React.js properly, we first need to define it. So what is React? React is a UI component library in which the components are created with React using JavaScript, not a special template language. This approach is called creating composable UIs, and it's fundamental to React's philosophy. React UI components are highly self-contained, concern-specific blocks of functionality. For example, there could be components for date picker, capture, address, and zip code elements. Such components have a visual representation and dynamic logic. Some components can even talk to the server on their own. An example of this would be an autocomplete component, which might fetch the autocompletion list from the server. A quick digress, just to make sure we all understand what we mean by UI. In the broadest sense, a UI, or a user interface, is everything that facilitates communication between computers and humans. Think of a punch card or a mouse. They are both UIs. When it comes to software, engineers talk about graphical user interfaces, GUIs, which were pioneered for the early personal computers, such as Macs and PCs. A GUI consists of menus, text, icons, pictures, borders, and other elements. Web elements are a narrow subset of the GUI. They reside in browsers, but there are also elements for desktop applications in Windows, OS X, and other operating systems. But do note that every time we mention UI in this course, we are referring to a web GUI. Component-based architectures generally tend to be easier to reuse, maintain, and extend than monolithic UIs. What React brings to the table is the use of pure JavaScript without templates, and a new way to look at composing components. When we think of large web applications like Facebook, one of the most painful tasks when developing these kinds of applications is managing how the views change in response to data changes. Let's refer to the official React website for more hints about the problem React addresses. We built React to solve one problem, building large applications with data that changes over time. React emerged from Facebook and is now also used by Instagram, PayPal, Uber, Sberbank, Asana, Khan Academy, HipChat, Flipboard, and Atom. Most of these applications originally used something else, but switched to React and are extremely happy with that switch. And you've probably figured this out. The major advantage of using React is its ability to separate data from UI elements. Some of the more obvious benefits of React include its compatibility with simpler apps. React has a CBA with pure JavaScript, a declarative style, and powerful developer-friendly DOM abstractions. Not just DOM, but also iOS, Android, and so on. Fast UIs. React provides outstanding performance thanks to its virtual DOM and smart reconciliation algorithm, which, as a side benefit, lets us perform testing without starting a headless browser. and the fact that there is less code to write. React's great community and vast ecosystem of components provide developers with a variety of libraries and components. This is important when you're considering what framework to use. Many of its features make React easier to work with than most other front-end frameworks. So let's unpack React's great features. The concept of simplicity in computer science is highly valued by developers and users. It doesn't equate to ease of use. Something simple can be hard to implement, but in the end, it will be more elegant and efficient. And often, an easy thing will end up being pretty complex. React's approach allows for simpler solutions via a dramatically better web development experience for software engineers. In React, this simplicity is achieved with the following features: declarative over imperative style. React embraces declarative style over imperative by updating views automatically. Component-based architecture using pure JavaScript. React doesn't use domain-specific languages for its components, but just pure JavaScript, and there's no separation when working on the same functionality. Powerful abstractions. React has a simplified way of reacting with the DOM, allowing us to normalize event handling and other interfaces that work similarly across browsers. And then there's speed and testability. In addition to the necessary DOM updates, your framework may perform unnecessary updates, which makes the performance of complex UIs even worse. And this becomes especially noticeable and painful for users when you have a lot of dynamic UI elements on your web page. On the other hand, React's virtual DOM exists only in the JavaScript memory. Every time there's a data change, React first compares the differences using its virtual DOM. Only when the library knows there's been a change in the rendering will it actually update the DOM. Ultimately, React updates only those parts that are absolutely necessary, so that the internal state, or the virtual DOM, and the view, which is the real DOM, are the same. And last but not least, ecosystem and community. As already mentioned, React is supported by the developers of Facebook and their peers over at Instagram. As with Angular and some other libraries, having a big company behind the technology provides a sound testing ground. It's deployed to millions of browsers, reassurance about the future, and an increase in contribution velocity. The React community is incredible. Most of the time, developers don't even have to implement much of the code. And in our next lesson, we're going to talk about JSX. JSX stands for JavaScript XML, and we'll explore how to create elements with JSX, how components work with it, and how to output variables in it. Basically, you'll see how and why JSX makes it easy to write and add HTML in React. So let's move on and see how React fits into our web applications. In a way, the React library by itself, without React Router or a data library, is less comparable to frameworks like Vue and Angular. React works nicely with other front-end technologies, but it's mostly used as part of a single-page architecture because of single-page application, or SPA, seems to be the most advantageous and popular approach to building web apps. Single-page applications, or SPAs, and React. The initial React release was in 2013 by Facebook. React is not an SPA framework, but a Vue library. It only enables us to render components as viewable elements in a browser, yet the whole ecosystem around React makes it possible to build single-page applications. In React, we can keep the focus on our view layer before we introduce more aspects to our application. Every other aspect is another building block of our SPA. So what are the advantages of the building blocks of SPAs? These building blocks are essential to build a mature application. They come with two advantages. The first one is we can learn the building blocks step by step. We don't have to worry about understanding them all together. It's different from a framework that gives us every building block from the start. This course focuses on React as the first building block. More building blocks will eventually follow. And secondly, all building blocks are interchangeable. It makes the ecosystem around React such an innovative place. Multiple solutions are competing with each other. We can pick the most appealing solution for us and our use case. The first generation of SPA frameworks arrived at an enterprise level. They are more rigid. React stays innovative, and that's why it's used by the likes of Airbnb, Netflix, and of course, Facebook. We will need to install Node and NPM. Both are needed to manage the libraries that we need along the way. And in this course, we will install external Node packages via NPM, which is Node Package Manager. These Node packages can be libraries or whole frameworks. The Node Package Manager, or the NPM, allows us to install external Node packages from the command line. These packages can be a set of utility functions, libraries, and whole frameworks. They are dependencies of our application, and we can either install these packages to our global Node package folder or to our local project folder. Global Node packages are accessible from anywhere in the terminal. We only have to install them once to our global directory. We install a global package by typing this into our terminal. The -G flag tells npm to install the package globally. Local packages are also used in our application. For instance, React as a library will be a local package which can be required in our application for usage, and we install it via the terminal by typing this. But how do we initialize the node modules and folder and package.json file for our project in the first place? There is an npm command to initialize an npm project and thus a package.json file. Only when we have that file can we install the new local packages via npm, and the command looks like this. The -y flag is a shortcut to initialize all the defaults in our package.json. We don't use the flag, we have to decide how to configure the file. After initializing our npm project, we are good to install new packages using npm install package. There are multiple approaches to get started with a React application. The first one is to use a CDN, Content Delivery Network. That may sound a bit more complicated than it actually is. Several companies have CDNs that host files publicly for people to consume them. These files can be libraries like React, because after all, the bundled React library is only a react.js JavaScript file. It can be hosted somewhere and we can require it in our application. So how does one use a CDN to get started in React? We can inline the script tag in our HTML that points to a CDN URL. To get started in React, we need two files, React and React DOM. And you might be wondering why we should use a CDN when we have npm to install node packages such as React. When our application has a package.json file, we can install React and React DOM from the command line. The requirement is that the folder is initialized as npm project using npm init -y with a package.json file. We can install multiple node packages in one line with npm like this. This approach is often used to add React to an existing application that is managed with npm. Oh, and one more thing. We should have to deal with Babel to make our application aware of JSX, the React syntax, and JavaScript ES6. Babel transpiles code so that the browsers can interpret JavaScript ES6 and JSX. Not all browsers are capable of interpreting the syntax. The setup includes a lot of configuration and tooling. It can sometimes be overwhelming for React newcomers. Now, because of this reason, Facebook has introduced Create React App as a zero configuration React solution. On our journey of learning React, we will use the Create React App to bootstrap our application. It is an opinionated yet zero configuration starter kit for React introduced by Facebook in 2016, and it's highly recommended for beginners. In Create React App, the tooling and configuration evolve in the background while the focus is on the application implementation. To get started, we have to install the package to our global node packages. After that, we will always have it available on the command line to bootstrap new React applications. The command looks like this. We can check the version of Create React App to verify a successful installation on your command line, like this. Now we can bootstrap our first React application. We've called it Hacker News, but you can choose a different name. And we can do this by writing this command in the terminal. The bootstrapping does take a couple of seconds. Once it's done, simply navigate into the folder using this command. And you might want to snap and save these steps so that you can refer back to them at any point you need them. Alternatively, you can find them in your summary notes for this lesson. Alrighty, and a quick breather, and I suppose a digression, just to check that you're familiar with the term bootstrapping in software development. Now, bootstrapping in software development usually refers to starting a self-sustaining process that is supposed to proceed without external input. Basically, it's creating a self-sustaining process from scratch. Now we can open the application in our editor. The following folder structure, or a variation of it, depending on the Create React App version, should be presented like so. Okay, so let's break down these folders. readme.md. The .md extension indicates that the file is a markdown file. Markdown is a lightweight markup language with plain text formatting syntax. Many source code projects come with a readme.md file to give us initial instructions about the project. Many source code projects come with a readme.md file to give us initial instructions about the project. When pushing our project to a platform such as GitHub eventually, the readme.md file will show its content prominently when we access the repository. And because we've used Create React App, our readme.md should be the same as shown in the official Create React App GitHub repository. Node modules. The folder has all the node packages that were and are installed via npm. Since we've used Create React App, there should be already a couple of node modules installed for us. Usually we will never touch this folder, but only install and uninstall node packages with npm from the command line. Package.json. This file shows us a list of node package dependencies and other project configuration. .gitignore. The file indicates all files and folders that should not be added to our remote Git repository when using Git. They should only live in our local project. The node modules folder is such a use case. It is sufficient to share the package.json file with our peers to enable them to install all dependencies on their own without sharing the whole dependency folder. Public. The folder holds all our files for building our project. Eventually, all our written code in the src folder will be bundled into a couple of lines when building our project and placed in the public folder. And don't worry about manifest.json and registerservicesworker.js at this stage. We won't be needing them for this project. In the beginning, everything that we need is located in the src folder. The main focus is on the app.js file to implement React components. It will be used to implement our application, but later we might want to split up our components into multiple files, whereas each file maintains one or a few components on its own. We'll also find a test.js file for our tests, and an index.js as an entry point into the React world. We'll get to know both these files in later lessons. And in addition, there is an index.css and an app.css file to style our general application and our components, and they all come with default style when we open them. And do note that the Create React App application is an npm project. Remember that we use npm to install and uninstall node packages to our project. And it's time for a demonstration. I'm going to show you how to install node.js and create your first React application. Let's do it. Since we're going to use JavaScript for our React development on Windows, there's absolutely no way around Node.js and NPM. Node JavaScript is the JavaScript runtime, which makes it possible to run JavaScript outside the browser. The underlying Node Package Manager, or NMP, is used to install libraries, such as React.js, to your projects on the command line. We're going to see a little bit later on how this works on the command line for Windows users. In order to install Node.js, we need to head over to the Node.js website and download the Windows version, which is recommended for most users. So let's type in Google, download Node.js. And now we go to the website nodejs.org. And we hit the Windows installer, and this will start the download of the file for us. And it might take some time, depends on the internet speed that you're currently using. And once the download is completed, we're going to open that file. And there are a few steps that we're going to follow. So the first step is to press Next, and then we will accept the term license agreement. And then we hit Next again. And then this window opens up and it's going to ask us if we want to change the location for the system. So we're going to leave the default location and then hit Next again. Right, so on this screen, you can customize the setup, but we're going to install the default setup. So I'm going to hit Next. You may check to automatically install these tools with Node.js, but we're not going to check this as we're only going to install Node.js. So I'm just going to hit Next again. And then after all of that, we finally hit Install, and the installation process will begin automatically. And this might also take some time to complete the installation, depending on your internet speed. And then for Windows machines, it asks for permission to install Node.js. And I'm just going to hit Yes, and the installation will start. Almost there. Come on, you can do it. There we go. And now Node.js is installed on our Windows machine. So I'm going to hit Finish. And now we can use npm to install our package React.js. Let's install our first Node package with npm on the command line. So we will install it globally with -g lag. Because of installing it globally, we will always have to access it on the command line. Later on, we will install the Node package of your project without the -g flag. We will only have access to the Node package in your project. Now, on the command line in Visual Studio Code, you can type the following command. Let's open Visual Studio Code. And then we can create a new folder. So let's go to our desktop, or from here, open folder. And then create a new folder, and we'll call it React.js. And then hit enter and select to open that folder. Now we're going to put our projects into that React.js folder. So firstly, let's open up the terminal by going to Terminal and then tap New Terminal. And here we will type our first command npm install -g create React app, and then hit enter. And this will install the Create React app globally on our Windows machine. Create React app allows us to bootstrap React applications with zero configuration. There's no need to get involved too early in the tooling with Webpack and Babel. It's the simplest approach to learn React without worrying about all the tooling around it. We can bootstrap our first React.js application with npx, which comes via npm on Windows. So we're going to pass the name after passing the Create React app of our application. So the command looks like this: npx create React app. And then we pass our application name. So let's call it my-app. And then hit enter. So this will create a folder called My App, which is the same name that we passed after our application. So it might take some time to bootstrap all the files in our My App folder. And now we've just created our family wrapped up called My. And now let's go to My App folder by tapping CD, which stands for Change Directory, My-app. Now we're inside the folder My App. So to start My App application, we type npm start. npm and then start, and then hit enter. And this command should give us an output where we can find an application in the browser. So let's allow access. And here is the output of the command npm start. And this is what our React application looks like inside the browser. When we use the Create React App tool, it creates a hierarchy of files and folders. So let's have a look and explain this structure in a simpler way. If we expand our My App folder, we will find some folders and files. So let's start by Node modules. Node modules contains all the dependencies that are needed for an initial working React application. So we'll find all these folders and files needed by the React application. And we also have gitignore, and this file specifies intentionally untracked files when we use git to let git ignore all these files. So in this case, all the node modules and all of these files will be ignored when we use git or GitHub. The next file is called package.json, and this file contains various metadata that's relevant to our project. It specifies the dependencies being used in the project, which helps npm set up the same environment on different machines for our project. We also have the README file, and this file can be used to define usage or to build instructions or maybe a summary of the project. It uses Markdown markup language to create content. You also have the public folder, and this is a root folder that gets served up as our application. And we have favicon.ico. And this is an icon file that's used to index HTML and favicon. We also have index.html file, and it's used as a template file, which served up when we ran start script to launch our application. It's considered best practice not to create multiple HTML files in the public folder. Instead, we use this file and inject React components into this file. But don't worry, we're going to explore all of this a little bit later. It's just for me to tell you for now. And then we also have manifest.json, and this is used to define our application. It mostly contains metadata used by mobile phones to add web applications to the home screen of a device. So let's go to the most important file of the application, which is all of these files inside the src folder. And this folder is our application folder. It contains our components, test CSS file, and it's the mind of our application. Inside this folder, we have app.css, and this contains styles of our React component. And when I say our React component, I mean app.js. So app.js is this file and has a very basic React component defined, which can be replaced by our own root component. We also have app.test.js, and this file has very basic test, and it's defined in this file, which can be replaced by our own test. We also have index.css. And index.css contains styles for general setup of our application. Also, we have index.js, and this file renders our component and registers service workers. We also have logo.svg and the svg file of React logo, and it's being used in component app.js, and this is by default. And just to give a quick idea what we're working with, so our main component here is app.js. Just to give you a quick idea of what we're working with, so this is our main component here, app.js, and this is render things to the screen. So now if we change anything here inside this code, so instead of this paragraph, let's write hello React developers. And when we save this file and check our screen, we will find hello React developers render to the screen. And that's how it works. We just update our components and render things to the screen. So we're going to take a look at all these files step by step in the next lesson. So please do stick around, it's pretty exciting.